I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay.
Previous guest writes the first question.
The very first question. All right. Here we go. Without trying to be cool or tough or high speed, tell us, when things got dark and that cold feeling, call it dread, fear, anxiety, washes over you, how do you handle it? What does it feel like? How do you recover?
It's a lot to unpack in that question.
And it's one question, but it warrants several different answers. And I could answer this question through the lens of, is this during military service or is this during after transition? And so what answer would you prefer?
Personally, for me, I want you to take the avenue that feels the best for you. What immediately calls to you from that question that you want to get that answer out?
Immediately. Long story short, I've had an extremely rough transition. It started in about 2017, 2018 when I had my diving injury. And I've just gotten to the part where I'm back on my feet. I have the feeling personally that I'm back on my feet. And I've had those moments. It's been about a year where I only wore one outfit. I'd given up. I'd shut down so much that I wore the same pair of Champion sweatpants and the same blue hoodie for my first command pretty much every single day for about a solid year. I didn't really push myself further than to getting up and getting my child to school and back, getting myself some food, and then just getting through the day. In those worst moments, in those moments when you just have, you don't know what's in front of you, you have uncertainty, you've just been plopped out of the military. It's the go outside with your kid and find some bugs and go play with a cardboard box. I found so much comfort in my children. Not everybody has children, but maybe you have a dog or whatever. You have something around you that'll bring you some sort of joy, and that'll bring you some sort of, not you putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, but just something to keep you going, just enjoy being alive. Just enjoy the present, that I'm here in this world and I'm breathing, and I'm okay. Those moments that were the ones that I really had to look back and just be like, Tommy, you've been stripped away from your identity. You've been stripped away from your livelihood. You just had your second child, and now everything got flipped upside down. And so let's figure it out. So those were the moments where I just was absolutely like miserable. I wasn't talking to people. I was pushing people away. I was pushing my family away. But I had to find those little tiny moments, just setting up like a Hot Wheels track or, whatever, playing dolls or something, those were moments where I actually did find some like clarity. And like, these two little children are what my lives are about. And that's kind of what helped me recover was constantly keeping them in my heart and mind, and same with my wife, saying I may not have my professional life just went to shit. My social life kind of went to shit. My business just went to shit. I have a wonderful wife. I'm lucky to have a wonderful wife. I'm lucky to have these beautiful children. This is all I've got right now, but it's the most important thing in the world. And so that was what I had to see through that fog. A lot of guys, and I can experience this with my own father. My parents went through a very, very rough divorce for about 10 years. And my father became a version of himself that I didn't know. He became angry, and he became, just everything. I knew when his truck would pull up, the house would get tense. Like, you'd feel the tension in the room. I started feeling myself become like that. I could see myself become that. You get in that hyper-vigilant, fuck around and find out, FO and FA, sort of headspace. You're vigilant. You're waiting for somebody to make you angry so you can just pop off and flip out, or your kid does something and you're yelling, but you're yelling at you're scolding your child, but then you're also pulling from your own anger, and you're projecting that own anger displaced on everybody around you that you should love. And so you've got to consciously and intentionally work to get out of that. And you have to hang on to that little shred of hope, or else you're going to give up. You're going to drink yourself to death, or you're going to get into a wreck or get into a fight, and then shit's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And so that was really what kind of pulled me out and, helped me push through a lot of that transition stuff.
We're going to get into this because I'm really interested in your journey of your mental health healing. I really honestly believe that that's an important story for everybody to hear. Where I'm going with this right now, though, I'll put you on the spot a little bit because I'm assuming a lot of that reflection back is post therapy and kind of being able to see the bigger picture now. But in the moment when you were at your worst, putting on the same sweatsuit every day, did you see yourself as saying, I don't give a shit and this is the best I'm going to get? Or was it, man, I want to be better, I just can't figure it out? Does that make sense?
It was a lot of things. It was, well, first off, the end of my career came as a sudden blow, came completely blindsided me. And all of a sudden I have a doctor telling me to sit down because they think I have a brain aneurysm in the back of my head. And so, trying to get to the question before therapy, while I was in the midst of the deepest, darkest parts, I was just in scramble mode, grabbing for straws. What should I do? What should I do? This is ending. I had promised my father-in-law that when I retired from the military, I'd bring my wife back to Vancouver. I had that in my heart. I try to be a man of integrity. And so that was something that I promised, but I didn't think about Tommy. I didn't stop and say, Tommy, you're transitioning out of the military. You're doing an international move. You're going to try to get into college. And then you've got a business you're running. And things just started peeling off. And so, yeah, it was, I have been on the business side of a therapist chair, quite a bit. And I've worked through a lot of problems. I did a breathwork retreat in Mexico. That helped me get a lot of anger and resentment out of my heart and mind. But in those worst moments, it was always just saying, got this beautiful family around you that cares about you. You're warm. You're in a house, and it's a humbling thing to say that, to look at your life and look at it slide backwards, and you want all these things, and or you see someone who's a very, very rich person. Finally, the bottom falls out, and then they freak out and they flip out. Well, there's smaller increments to that. You just might be a normal guy, and now you're just hanging on to life, and now you're just praying that you can find a house to afford and whatever it is. But it really was family that got me through that. Family and just little shreds of hope.
You've already mentioned the tension that came from your father that you experienced as a young boy from his divorce and everything going on with your mom and dad. So I'd definitely like to kind of pivot, go down that road. Let's talk about young Tommy. Where's hometown? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Slidell, Louisiana. It's a little town just on the North Shore of New Orleans, Louisiana, where I was born. And I grew up as kind of a black sheep, I guess you say. My dad, he was a boxer. He was a runner. He was a football player. My uncle was a cop. My grandpa was a cop. And little Tommy decided he'd like to do acting when he was young. So it was a little bit of a black sheep thing. They were like, oh, Tommy does theater. Okay. And then...
do you know where that interest came from? Or did it was just there one day?
I don't know. I think it was just, I would make people laugh. I would make my family laugh and stuff. And then it just became fun. And I was like, okay, I auditioned for Talented Theater and they had me in. And so all of a sudden I'm doing plays and improv and stand-up comedy and all that stuff. But
anybody else in your family that you would consider artistic?
Absolutely. There's an artistic streak. Well, my dad's a pipe welder. My dad's been a pipe welder my entire life. But before that, he was an excellent artist. He could draw a beautiful portrait by charcoal or pen or pencil, and it would look like a picture image. And so that translated really to him doing a stack of dimes around a pipe, around a heater.
Let's be honest. We're hard on our sunglasses, especially first responders and military members. They get dropped, scratched, left on the dash, or crushed in our gear bags. Frontline Optics gives you the same premium quality and eye protection without the high price tag. Sure, you can spend big money on the designer brands, but why should you? From polarized UV 400 lenses to anti-reflective and water-repellent coatings, Every pair of Frontline Optics glasses is built to handle the demands of the job. And here's the best part. When life happens and they break, Frontline Optics has a no questions asked replacement program, even for prescription glasses. If that's not enough, Frontline Optics was founded by a firefighter, and a portion of every sale supports the First Responders Children's Foundation, helping the families of those who gave everything. If you're looking for sunglasses that look good, are built tough, and that come from a company that gives back, visit frontlineoptics.com and use the promo code TRANSITION10 to get 10% off your purchase. Frontline Optics, from a first responder for the front lines.
There's a lot of pieces to the pie that brought me to not only the Navy, but Navy diving. Part of it was that I grew up on the water. I grew up swimming. I was an excellent freestyle swimmer, and I would win. I would do swim competitions year after year, win swim competitions. So I knew I was a good swimmer. I had no fear of being in Lake Pontchartrain, which if you're familiar with the South, Lake Pontchartrain is just kind of
it's a big body of water.
It's a big body of water, and it's brackish and it's dark, and you can't really see much more than like 4 or 5 feet. And so I used to swim down to the bottom and grab clumps of mud and shells and stuff. And so
now in proximity, in proximity to where your house was, how close was the lake?
Oh, we were. It was right across the street.
Oh, okay.
So we were on the peninsula, kind of a peninsula side, like almost kind of how like it goes up into Fiddler's Cove, but like way smaller. So we had so I grew up in an apartment that was over a boathouse, and then on the other side of the street was my great grandpa's house, and he let my dad and my mom live in that other house when they were very young. But I swam, so I always knew I was a good swimmer. And then I got into theater towards junior high school, things started getting more visibly tense in the house. And then high school, it got worse and worse. I was kind of falling off in terms of what's expected as a good, young person. I was kind of on the wrong side of the tracks, and my dad was in and out. And eventually, I think it was almost him throwing me like an olive branch. Like, Tommy, what's going on in your life? You know what? He's like, look, I got a job coming up in Equatorial Guinea, Africa, in West Africa. And
I'm going to pull you back just a bit. I don't really want to rush through this. The environment at home, mom and dad, were they separated most of your life, or was there kind of we're together, but we're not really together from what you remember?
No, they white knuckled it. And I mean, I couldn't tell at the time. I just thought they fought a lot. And I just thought my dad was angry, and I mean, it was odd because in my younger years, my younger life, my childhood, he was fine. We'd go ride dirt bikes. We'd go do cool stuff on the weekends, this, that, just normal family, go to Florida in the summer. And then it just got worse and worse. And he bought a house, and he built this house, and it just, him and my mom it was like a slow train wreck from the time I was about maybe 14, 13 till I was about like almost 22 years old.
Any brothers or sisters?
One younger brother. Yeah, he's 4 years younger than me.
But you both lived under the same roof, or did live?
We did. Oh yeah, they were together the whole time.
Okay.
Yeah, they never had they didn't separate. They didn't go, and not till the very end did they separate domiciles. But they stayed in the house as long as they could. But it was a tumultuous house. It was, I think about it now, and I'm glad they white knuckled it. I'm glad they stuck by, but it just, man, my dad took so much of that anger and so much of that his uncertainty out on me and out on my mom, that like it took me years to recover from that. It took me years to kind of get where I can say I love you, Dad, and look him in the face and really, really, really mean it, But yeah, so I mean,
was mom working while you were a kid?
She worked as a paraprofessional. Okay. She worked at the school that I went to. She did what she could. My dad was a pipe welder, so he traveled a lot, and he was kind of in and out. He would, I did notice that he would try to kind of overparent a little bit when he came home. Like, oh, what you been doing? Like, what's going on here? And it was kind of like he'd show up and it'd be like, whoa, man, and so he regrets it too. And we talk about it now, and I reassure him that I love him, and then I tell him that you did what you could. And and on top of that, he was only 20 years old when I was born. I was 35 when I had my kids, so he had a whole different. The difference between where your head's at between 20 and 35, and so I forget and forgive. And I did do a trip. I went on a trip with a bunch of other military members to Mexico. And, during these breathwork sessions and during these moments of healing where we were kind of sharing and kind of letting it all out, airing it all out, and grieving with each other, I focused 100% on my dad. I didn't focus on the military stuff. I didn't focus on my injuries or anything like that. I was just like, I just want to put peace in my heart and let go of whatever my dad had to go through. I'm in my 40s now. I can kind of see it. I've been through my own arc of just not knowing what's going next in my life, and I've reined it in. And so he's older now, he's 63 now. So we're good now, but it was just really difficult.
You use the term black sheep in the family because you went towards acting. Is that something that somebody ever told you or overtly made you feel different because you wanted to be in acting? Or was it just kind of your perception? Because on the flip side, was mom supportive of like, hey, you want to be an actor? Go for it. Or did you get no support from any direction?
My mom gave me the support. She could see, she saw the talent. Like she saw that I was kind of a stage kid and liked the spotlight, liked to be on stage, liked to do character voices, that kind of stuff.
Did you do competitive swimming?
Yeah, for years I swam competitively. And I was amazing. I was great. I don't know what happened in junior high school, kind of hit puberty, priorities changed. My mom was devastated, when I was like, I don't want to swim anymore, but while I was in it, I swam competitively and loved it. And then I'd go play baseball begrudgingly. Just go sit in outfield, just bored.
So what was high school like for you? Were you good academically? Because where I'm going with this is, were you on that path to get into acting, or did it the same way you were real good at swimming, but then one day you're like, man, I don't want to do this anymore? Was that the same way with acting, or was it kind of taken from you?
I'd say with the theater world and like coming up in high school, I went to 2 different high schools. I just never fit in. I really didn't. I had my friends. I have a group of really close high school friends, and all of us were kind of outlier guys. Like all of us were just kind of like in our own personality. We weren't really the popular ones. We were just kind of like into our own thing, and we all kind of found each other. And so, yeah, I wasn't like the big jock, or I was known for doing a couple plays that I did really well, and so that was a little bit. But I don't know. High school, I felt kind of lost. Kind of didn't really know who I was, and then with acting and theater, I parlayed that into like doing professional improv and doing some stand up. I did a little bit of touring with stand up, and it kind of led into the restaurant industry. And like a lot of people in New Orleans end up, you're right there by
the food's horrible in New Orleans.
Oh, it's gross. It's terrible. Yeah, so I had this point where I was like, all right, we're still going to do stand up. I'm hosting a show on Saturday nights at this one theater, and that was fun. But I'm going to start working in high end restaurants and learning about wine and kind of getting that world started. And it was okay. It was cool. I had a DUI under my belt at 23, and then I was kind of like, all right, I'm working in wine, working in liquor and booze, and I want to get a job as an alcohol sales rep, which means I'll be driving around tasting wine with people. And I was like, man, that's a bad idea. For me personally, that's kind of, I don't know if I could be playing with the devil.
Did you have that realization after the DUI?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I did. And so that was another one of those things where I loved food and wine. I thought it was cool. I remember I got the job at Emeril's in New Orleans. It was like Emeril's like flagship restaurant. It was my first taste of having your pants creased and your shirt creased and having to have a perfect tie, and your apron had to be just down the middle. Wine key, crummer, cigar cutter, 3 pins and a pad. And it was like, and we had a guy that would shine our shoes at the restaurant, and it was cool. And I was like, I don't know, but this kind of feels like what it might be in the military. So that was another little like, like this rigidity, this like, line up, boys. I was like, okay, I can maybe get into this.
For reference, what year did you graduate high school?
2002.
And that immediate step off into being an adult, what were your aspirations? You mentioned acting and comedy, but that kid who's 18, were you thinking about college? Did you even pursue college?
I thought about it. I mean, not to put any blame on my father, but I didn't have any guidance. It was 15 or about 13 through my later teenager into my 20s, where I didn't have a single man in my life that was like a real, actual positive influence, that was training me, that was giving me the words to say, hey, Tommy, this is your next step of life. Let's really start thinking about it. Let's really kind of get a plan for you together, and I don't think my dad was capable of that, and I don't blame him for it, but, I wish I had that, and so I was kind of a mess, I didn't have any guidance. So I just kind of fell where I fell, and that happened to be the restaurant world. And I was still doing stand-up comedy. And it's just kind of like, I would look at, not to bash on people who've made waiting tables and bartending a career, but I would look at waiters and bartenders that were in their 40s and 50s that had been working in the industry, maybe sent kids off to college, bought a house, did the whole thing. But I just didn't see myself waiting tables and shaking cocktails, into anywhere past my 30s.
When does New York come into the picture, and how does it come into the picture? Did you go up to New York for a while?
I did. I went by myself at the tender age of 23. That was probably my first chance. That was my first attempt to get out.
So this is after you'd already worked at Emerald's and you were kind of in, or did you do that when you came back?
This was, so I'd worked at Emerald's for a while. I don't remember where I was at, because I kind of popped around a little bit in New Orleans. Emerald's was the one I worked at the most, so I kind of associated with that.
Got it.
But what did you say? I'm sorry.
I'm just kind of
the hurricane.
The adventure that took you north to New York.
Okay. Yeah, Katrina. So the hurricane hit. My brother and I stuck around for a while. We did some carpet pulling. We kind of hustled, made some money. I worked with some guys helping assist FEMA for the Blue Roof Project. We tarped a bunch of roofs. We went up to the Gulf Coast, which people never see, but was one of the most devastated areas I'd ever seen in my entire life was the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
How was your family directly impacted by Katrina?
4.5 inches of water and fence damage. My grandparents, my dad lost the house that they grew up in. They were from an area called Chalmette, Louisiana. Chalmette we went to my grandma's house and she had mold up to the ceiling. They had just renovated the house. And so, it was really sad. It was, there was one morning where, my mom told me she woke up and she saw my grandpa and grandpa were staying with us at the time. They needed shelter, and so they stayed with us. And she just said my grandma just kind of had her hands set and her head was bowed, and she just looks up and she's like, that Katrina's one real bitch. And my grandma doesn't curse. So her to say that, it was a tough moment, but
I would imagine she had lived through quite a few hurricanes, but was this the worst for
Camille,
her?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. This is the one that took everybody's house. And I think Camille took a lot of houses before that, but this, she was older and it was bad. They had to stay. I think they stayed up the Louisiana State Troopers facility for a little while for shelter there. And then when they could finally come back, into the city, they came back in. But yeah, so that was a crazy time. That was a rough time. But New York City, I got to a point where, I felt my parents were doing better. They were on their way. Stuff was cleaning up in Louisiana, and the comedy scene that I was part of, people were breaking off. They had a couple guys that were going off to Austin. They had a couple guys that were going off to LA. They had a couple guys that were going off to Chicago. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to New York, man. Like I do comedy. I like waiting tables. I know New York's another big restaurant comedy. I was 23 and I had $2,300 and a laptop. And I went and I was just still a mess. No guidance, no.
Do you know anybody in New York City when you got there?
I knew one. I had one friend. I had one friend that lived in Brooklyn that let me stay on his sleep on his couch for 2 weeks. Yeah, my friend Michael. And it was kind of like, yeah, man, you stay here 2 weeks if you want, kind of figure it out, and and New York was wild. I went too hard. I was 23. I had no guidance. That a 23-year-old, 22-year-old with no real fatherly or male guidance can be a very dangerous thing and a very unpredictable thing. And that's kind of how I was, and that's kind of how I lived my life, drank too much, partied too much, that kind of stuff. And came back from New York with my tail between my legs, went back into the restaurants. But this time I kind of came back with a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. I knew there's more out there for me, but I didn't know what. And, I had a girlfriend at the time, and I still just was like, I had this upstairs neighbor who was a commercial diver. So he let me try on his rig, and I thought that was really cool. So things are starting to piece together more and more. And
when you came back from New York, had you basically, and I'll use the analogy of an old steamer trunk, had you kind of put your acting career in that trunk and shut the door and like, that's done?
Not yet.
Oh.
I was still hanging on. I was still kind of hanging on, but I knew it was over with. And
when I say acting, I also mean like the comedy and all of it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, as far as like going up to like open mics and really pursuing it and doing more improv troops. Yeah, I was like, this is kind of, the popcorn's popped. I still wanted to do it. I still had a urge to go and perform a little bit, but it kind of all went away, I said, forget about that. And then that's kind of really when like, I was like, all right, let's go back to Emeralds. Let's get back into restaurants, get back into wines and stuff, and really start educating myself. My girlfriend at the time, she worked in the restaurant industry as a chef and as a writer too. So she was really good with like recipes and taught me some kitchen skills and stuff. And so that was sort of the path that I was on. But the whole like, okay, I can either be a restaurant manager or GM, or maybe I can do like wine, sommelier stuff. And I was just like,
doesn't sound like though it was really a passion or anything that was really going to hold your interest for any length of time.
No. I knew I wanted out. And nothing against Louisiana. I love Louisiana. I'm from there, but I just wanted out. I wanted a big change. I wanted a big change in my life. I wanted something bigger than me that I could hold on to. I wanted to be in a community, and I wasn't going to join a cult. I wasn't that dumb. I wasn't that naive. But the Navy sounded like a good thing, and the first thing they asked me was like, "What are you good at?" Wine and theater.
Did you look at any of the branches? How'd you pick the Navy?
I looked at the Army first. I looked at the different jobs that they were offering, and then I switched over to the Navy. Saw the job, and what's it called? Like challenge programs stuck out at me, and I was like, "What is challenge programs? It sounds like up my alley." And so I saw SAR, diver, EOD, SWIC, SEAL, and asked the recruiter, which one was which. At first they were like, you could be what do you get? What else are you good at? I was like, I was a champion swimmer when I was a kid. And they're like, you could be an air rescue swimmer. So I said, all right, let's do that. And I started training with the air rescue swimmer. He was great. I finally found my legs back in the pool again. Started, going to the UNO pool and University of New Orleans pool and swimming, as much as I could. And then I met a Navy diver. A Navy diver showed up at the recruit command, and he was like, "Well, he's like, what do you like? Do you like medicine, like engineering?" And I'd been to Africa this time. My dad had taken me to Africa, so I'd seen this like industrial industry and like what it's like. And I was like, yeah, I kind of like engineering, and I'm pretty handy.
Let's jump over to that real quick. So when does the trip to Africa happen?
The trip to Africa was post Katrina. It was after Katrina.
Before or after New York?
Jesus, I'm trying to get my time on the street here. So I'm sorry.
That's
sorry.
Right. It's not that important.
It's so long ago.
It's not that important.
It was such a long time ago.
What prompted the trip?
Katrina. It was Katrina, and then Katrina, New York. Back from New York, back to Slidell. Moved to New Orleans. Things weren't working out in New Orleans. And then my dad, okay, there we go. Yeah, my dad, like he was like, "Hey, Tommy, I got this opportunity to bring a hand out to Equatorial Guinea with us and go to Africa and work on the oil fields." And I was like, "Yeah, what else am I doing around here? Let's go." Had
you done any type of oil field work to that point?
No, no. I'd seen my dad weld. I had held a welding rod in my hand. I'd run my dad taught me a little bit of welding, a root pass, how to run a bead, that kind of stuff. And I was going to be expected to weld. He's like, "Tommy," he's like, "they might yell at you a little bit." He's like, "You're going to be a hand." He's like, these guys are like me. They're rough. They're not going to be nice guys. So just get ready for that. And I was like, all right, it sounds good. And it was a mobile refinery, a BP refinery, whatever other kind of SO, oils out there, loud, West Africa, hot as hell. And I'm with some of this group of like roughnecks and pipe fitters and these men. We're halfway around the country, and it was kind of weird. It was like they didn't really appreciate it. They didn't really appreciate that you're halfway around the world and we're seeing, this side of culture and the side of the planet that maybe 1% of the people get to see. And I found some beauty in that. I found some, going that far away from home and being like, wow, I'm on the other side of the world. That did kind of give me like the lust for travel. And so that wasn't, so when I come back from Africa, I had this sense of confidence about me. Like, and all I did was go to Africa and worked as a welding, as a welding hand. So watching, like turning up and turning down. My dad's like, whatever he needed me to turn for his current for his welding rod, grabbing stuff, go get this, go get that. But I came back with like, I felt accomplished, after I'd done this this work trip, and I was like, I can do more than carry drinks on a tray. I was a championship swimmer. I can do more. And once I jumped in the Navy thing and then met the diver who kind of introduced me to what diving was, I switched. I told the guy who was training me, I said, hey man, I want to be a diver. And he was like, you don't want to be a swimmer anymore? I was like,
but when you went off to boot camp, you had already switched your rating from SAR to Navy diver.
Yes. Yeah. I came in the first, let's say 5 months, I trained in depth. It was going down the SAR pipeline to Pensacola, and then just learning more about the dive community, recompression operations, the medical aspect, the engineering aspect, rigging, doing all that stuff. Man, I thought that was really cool. And I was like, and then my dad had about like a little bit of a chip on his shoulder about divers because he was a welder. And then the dive crew that were the underwater welders would come in and he'd be like, oh yeah, those divers, they think they're hot shit, and I was like, all right. Watch you, and I told him. I said, I'm gonna go be a Navy diver. He said, you can't do that, Tom. You smoke too many cigarettes. You know what I did? I said, no, now I don't. And I didn't pick up a single one after that. And I trained and I did yoga. Did hot yoga. I did a lot of hot. It was called Bikram yoga. I did a ton of Bikram yoga. Got my body. This is 27. I'm sorry, 26. Turning 27. I turned 27 in dive school. And so I was like, let's go. Let's.
Who recommended doing hot yoga as a preparation for you, or did you just pull that out of your own?
I had a place that was a block away from the street, a block away from where I lived, and I was like, you know what? I think maybe the first thing to do before I hit the gym and start lifting weights is maybe get mobility locked down. And so I did Bikram yoga, and then I would do a morning like cardio, swimming or running, and then I'd do a nightly pull-ups, push-ups, or weight training, whichever it is. There was a New Orleans Athletic Club that I bartended at part-time, and then they let me just kind of slip right in with my gym bag every now and then. And so that was a really good utilization.
You just said athletic club that bartended. So there was a bar at the gym?
It's the second oldest gym in the United States, only beat by the one in New York City. And yes, they absolutely had a bar in the gym, as well as like a card room and a bowling alley at one point. And one time it was this is like early 1900s, so it was like fencing. Working out wasn't working out.
So it was more of a social club.
To some, it was. To the people who would sit at that bar, the barflies, they'd show up after work or from wherever they came from, and they were not in any intentions, But I did make smoothies. Sometimes I'd make a smoothie or two.
I could see some guy, honey, I'm going to the gym.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, but they had a boxing gym upstairs, which was awesome. So like, they boxed a bunch of firefighters, and that was kind of cool. Like that was a good way to train. I remember like it was an upstairs gym that went around a pool that was on the bottom floor. So I would do like lunges all the way around, and then 5 pull-ups, and then lunges all around, and then 15 push-ups, and and it was just, I don't know. I just had this fight. I just knew that I was coming up for something cool. And the more I talked to the recruiters about it, the more I talked to the guy, the more I looked at YouTube videos, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be insane. And so I was, by the time I was ready to ship out, I was ready to go.
When did you take off for boot camp?
May 5th, 2011.
Great Lakes?
Yep. Yeah.
And how'd you once you got into it, how was that experience for you as far as the rigidity, the structure, all that kind of stuff? Did you take to it immediately or did you struggle with it?
It was what I craved. I knew I wanted some more structure and rigidity in my life. I remember the first time being on like the parade deck and putting on like the parka and uniform and like marching in formation. That was the oddest experience ever. I'm like, I'm in the military. Oh wow, okay, here we go. It was like in the Army now, or like, I had a warrant who used to call me Taps. Like, hey Taps, what are you doing here? Like, I don't know. But yeah, that, it was just out of body, not out of body experience, just very, very odd experience. I dug into it. I was with a I don't know what they call it, compartment with guys that were going to be EOD, air rescue, and then divers. And the weirdest part was, we had a lot of these guys that were like, I'm going to be an EOD officer. I'm going to be an EOD, tech, and this all. And the thing is with divers and EOD is EOD goes to their pool week before we do. They show up to prep and it's like, boom, they go right into pool week. So for 6 weeks, I heard all these EOD wannabes saying, I'm going to be a tech. I'm going to be a tech. And that first pool week was like, you saw them walking right back with their heads hung. And it was like, oh shit. Well, I guess it'll be our turn in a couple weeks, but that, I mean, prep was prep. It was very hard. It was just cutting the fat, just thinning the fat, and then send the rest down to Panama City to do dive school. And I was dead set on doing it. I'm not the smartest guy. I almost got dropped a couple times. I didn't do so well with, had a hard time calculating time fuse. Had a difficult time with blowing shit up. And so that was bad. I thought they were going to drop me. I had a friend actually come to me and was like, Tommy, what are you going to do? And I was like, well, maybe they'll have me down at Pensacola for air rescue, maybe the second choice. And I mean,
where's dive school at?
Dive school's in Panama City, Florida. And then the air rescue swimmer school's in Pensacola, maybe about 2 hours away.
Did you get a break between getting out of boot camp and starting dive school?
Well, it goes boot camp, and then immediately you go to right across the street to prep. And then dive prep is 6 weeks. And then you get like maybe a couple days. They fly you down to Panama, kind of set your gear down. But then that next morning, no, you're in your dress whites, and the instructors are very enthusiastically introducing themselves.
What I'm getting at is, you didn't have an extended period where you went back home now as a sailor to where people, your family, your friends could see you in this new role before you went off to dive school?
Absolutely. It wasn't before dive school. The break was in between dive school and going to Hawaii, going to my first command. So we had an ECS. It's called Expeditionary Combat School, and it's just 6 weeks of shooting. Linear shooting, a little bit of moving. But I lived in Slidell, and my mom lived in Slidell, and Gulfport, Mississippi is literally 25 minutes away from Slidell, Louisiana. And she had an extra car. So I was going back every weekend to go hang out with my mom where everybody else was staying at ECS school. And so that was when my friends were like, whoa, dude, how was dive school? What was it like? And, I just made it back. And it was even a more sense of pride, And so I really enjoyed the ECS experience and having that. And I think I took 2 weeks leave as well, right before I shipped out to Hawaii. So that time was really the time to say, hey, look, this is what I did. See you later, Dad. My dad he was all over that graduation. He was proud. He was extreme. He was super. My whole family was proud, and it felt good, But that was the time I got to, shine for my family before heading out to Hawaii.
Now, was Hawaii choice, or were you ordered to that command?
I was given orders.
So they didn't give you a list of like, hey, pick. It was just, you're going to Hawaii. Not that that's a horrible thing.
I had a little bit of help. With getting those orders, and then I had a friend who had checked in. So when I had the opportunity, I was like, Hawaii. I'm doing Hawaii. And like my buddy had he was one class ahead of me, and he was like, dude, if you can get orders of Mutsu, get orders of Mutsu. It's awesome out here. So I made it work, and where I ended up heading out to Hawaii.
I want to jump forward into your career because you got to be part of a recovery of an F18, but that was in the Gulf, correct?
Yes. Yeah, that was in the Persian Gulf.
So kind of a Reader's Digest between Hawaii and then that incident. How did it come about?
Oh, well, I checked in Hawaii. We started doing qualifications, started doing our, basically like checking in. And then the way that works is it's a deployable. It's a sea duty. It's a sea duty. Yeah, it's a sea duty. So I was expected to deploy twice. We did workups. My first deployment was South Pacific. So we're on a junk boat or ARS 50 class called the Safeguard. We popped around. We moved any kind of dangerous to navigation out of channels. So we moved some coral heads, that kind of stuff. And then we came back. And that was our first deployment. We thought it was going to be, that was it. Okay. And the opportunity to do a second one came through. And while we're in the South Pacific, we just bonded. Company 1-3, we just became a band of brothers, honestly. And we fought, but we loved each other. We watched each other back out in town. And we came back to Hawaii, and our master diver stood in front of us and said, "All right, boys, a lot of y'all are PCSing. You're in your 9-month window. You're going to be leaving. We have the opportunity to go to Bahrain and go do one more for 6 more months." And we all looked at each other and we were like, "Yeah, absolutely. We're not going to hesitate to do this. Like, we all like each other. We're all friends." The only thing was going back home that day and looking at my wife, who I had just returned from deployment with 2 weeks before, and being like, "Hey, I gotta leave again. I've got an opportunity to sell you. I'm going to be going to Bahrain for 6 months. And then as soon as we get back, we're going to PCS somewhere else." And she wasn't crazy about it, but it was kind of like, "Hey, this is what this is about. It's about deploying. It's about going out the door with the boys." And I asked you when we first kind of got together, like, this is what it's going to look like. You
guys met in Hawaii, correct?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, we met. It was like a vacation fling turned into a life.
So she was on vacation when you met?
Yep. She was on vacation. We kind of knew a friend, like we had a friend connection, and just fell in love. And then she's moving to Canada. On my way back from deployment 2, she had already moved up to Hawaii and set up while we were there. But yeah, we were on this Bahrain deployment. It was basically a lot of routine fuel barge dives, a little bit of clearance diving, some flyaways here, there, nothing serious. And then one morning it was hey, F18 went down.
Each of us is on the grind. It's that early alarm, the extra rep, the drive that doesn't quit. Grind, spelt GRND, is the mindset that pushes you to go further when most people stop. Founded by a former Army Ranger, Grind Activewear is built on one simple mission: give 100% and then some more. Every piece of clothing is functional, durable, and made for people who outwork the rest. On the field, in the gym, or wherever you're building your next lane. This isn't just clothing. It's commitment woven into fabric, rooted in American grit and culture. Because when you wear Grind, you're not just wearing a logo. You're representing effort, discipline, and purpose. Check out thegrndcollective.com and use the promo code TRANSITION15 for 15% off your order. You're already on the grind. Now wear it.
We had a catastrophic engine failure. Both pilots were saved. They were fine, but the Navy wants their shit back right now. And you guys are the ready salvage team. So we're going to get a vessel of opportunity out here. We're going to get you guys out there. And the first 10 days of the mission, we were told, "Hey, we're not going to wait for a mixed gas console to come out. So you guys are going to be doing this on air." The allowable max depth is 186 feet on just air. The project is sitting at 180. So we're going to be pushing the boundaries of air diving. They've already flown UUVs over it. They've already located it. They've already EODs gone down there to check if there's any live ordnance. Now it's up to us to go pull it up. And so that was our mission.
When you were telling your wife that, "Hey, I'm heading to Bahrain," that was the first, you already knew that mission was coming, or had you already been in Bahrain for a little bit and then got pulled to that mission?
We had been on Bahrain. We were hanging out, eating kebabs.
Got it.
And we were doing flyaways, and then it was like, "Hey, everybody come back. Everybody come back to the command." Something happened, and boom. And so none of us knew this was going to happen, and then none of us knew we were going to get pulled onto it. But
had you dove to that depth previously?
Yes, but on rebreather. on a Mark 16 rebreather, I had made it down to 316 feet and then back up. So I'd been really deep before, and we did training evolutions, you know, where you see that boat getting smaller and smaller, and you're like, okay, I'm trusting you, you know. But the depth doesn't faze me. It never has. I've always trusted my gear. I've always, you know, as soon as I could feel that air source, it's like I feel safe. I know I'm good. I don't care what's I don't care what's happening underneath here. I'm breathing. I'm fine. I'll stay down here for 10 hours if you need me to. But going down and finding the project was hard. Once you stepped off that stage, I didn't think nitrogen narcosis would really hit me, but I was carrying a wire rope over one shoulder and a shackle over the other. And once I took that first deep breath of that high partial pressure of nitrogen, man, I turned into a baby. Like my speech pattern altered. I started saying things like, "Hi, master diver. I can't find the other diver. I can't see in front of my face. Where is he?" And the other diver is listening to me. He's like, "Tommy, I'm right here." And so it was wild. So you had to kind of see through that nitrogen narcosis. And some people, you probably get comments on this podcast that are going to be like, "Oh, I dove to 195 and I didn't get nitrogen narcosis." Well, guess what? Everyone's physiology is different. Some guys, they got out after this experience. Some guys, they went down there, they were doing backflips. They didn't care. They were rigging stuff and they came back just fine. Some, you know, like it just one of those things. Everybody has their limit.
I'll call it the layers of dives. Were you the first couple to go down, or had other guys already gone down to it previously?
I believe EOD had gone down on Mark 16s to go do ordnance retrieval.
I meant like from your team. Where I'm going with this.
Oh, from my team.
Anybody else on your team that went down and experienced something that you kind of went, okay, I know we're pushing the boundaries of oxygen. Maybe now I'm starting to hesitate.
Yes, we had one guy get trapped on the bottom. That was pretty bad. Him and my best friend went down together. My best friend had told me, he was like, I looked into this guy's eyes and I could see fear, like while we're hatting up. And I was like, "You sure you want to do this?" And, you know, he probably should have backed out, but he was like, no, I got it. I'll go. And I mean, my buddy, he's a nice guy. I think I would have been like, "No, dude, why don't you just run the comms?" You know, like I can see in your eyes, man, that you're a little bit shaken up and you're not confident in what you're about to do. So let's maybe switch out divers. But he went down, he got lodged underneath the wing. The mud kind of started to suck in a little bit. And my buddy, you know, he was trying to get him out, but then he got stuck in the mud too. And so he's telling me afterwards, he's like, "Well, I guess this is how I die." I guess this is, and then they had to launch standby. So they launched a third diver, and the way my friend describes it to me, and he's like, I'm like looking up, trying to wiggle myself out of mud, and all I see is this light and a dude holding on to two umbilicals, just ripping down, just flying down. His light's getting brighter and brighter and brighter, and the dude who was coming down was this big strong guy, and he's like, man, his boots landed on the wing, he reached down, grabbed our harnesses, and then just just curled us out of the mud and became our savior. So yeah, we had the wing one guy got trapped under the wing, another guy, the stage was pulling up, and as the stage was lifting up, he didn't notice, but he had lines around his rig, and the visibility was so bad that we really couldn't see each other to check each other out very well. We were just trying to get back to the stage safely. And so we're like, all right, you know, he was, all right, red diver, green diver, ready, squared away, ready to leave bottom. But they weren't squared away. They had lines attached to them. So the stage starts coming up, but the line starts pinching down. And so it smushed him to where by the time he started screaming, he was restrained to the stage, he was pinned to the stage with the line. And I was on comms at the time, and it's like, hold on, he's screaming, he's screaming, stop the winch, you know. And I was like, come down. I was like, come down 2 feet, come down 2 feet. And I hear him go, "I don't know why anybody would want to be a Navy diver." I was like, I'm glad you managed to squeeze out a men of honor line in your moment of panic. But he got out too. He was done with it. Another guy kind of just lost, like, nitrogen narcosis does crazy shit to you. And he lost interest during the dive. He was like, "Fuck this, I'm going back to the stage." Sorry to curse. I can say, "Forget this," and go back to the stage. I'm done with it, and didn't want to do it anymore. I liked it. It didn't. That's not the dive that hurt me. It was deep, but it did. But I mean, I came up. I went and did my chamber period. It was a surface decompression dives, and I was fine. But 10 days, we got the fuselage and the cockpit and the front half. Basically what I did was I took the wire pennant. I went around the landing gear of the front part, and then took a safety shackle, and then shackled in with that to the lifting line. And that's how we got the front end of the jet up. And then the second trip, I think it was a 20-day mission. I wasn't on the second push, and then they got the rest. They actually had to have a pontoon come abreast to the vessel opportunity that had the strength ratio to lift up, because that was where like the fuel and the engines were and stuff. So it was way heavier than the actual salvage boat could handle. And so we got it out, and it was really cool. And that was,
So am I correct in assuming that it came out and it had it broken into pieces?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So sorry, to add context.
No, that's okay.
The jet took off, catastrophic engine failure, smacked that water and cracked into two. Thankfully, the pilots had ejected just before it hit the water. You
mentioned that when you went down, you called it NARC.
Mm-hmm.
That what I'm getting at is, in something like that, can you recover while you're at the bottom, or do you have to immediately come up as soon as you start experiencing that?
Oh no, you keep going.
Oh, okay.
You go to as long as you max out. You go as long as you can go. I knew I had nitrogen narcosis because my speech pattern changed, and I started getting like kind of a little bit panicky, a little bit freaked out. But I'd also educated myself so much on diving to say this is experience. It's almost like when you're drunk, you're drunk, you're trying not to be drunk, but you are. It was one of those like, okay, I'm narked out, but I'm going to communicate very, very well with topside. I'm going to tell them exactly what I'm doing. I have a camera on top of my head so I can actually verify with Master Diver up top to be like, shackles in, cotter keys in. I'm pulling on this thing every which way. Let's get it up out of the water. But some people get narked, and they've had people die because they get so narked out and so drunk and so carefree. It's like having nitrous gas that they've taken their rigs off or secured their air. It's like, I don't do this anymore. Pull their helmets off, in the water. So it affected me, but I'm glad we didn't go any further deep, because I'm glad it didn't affect me with where it frightened me, But.
So it's one of those things. It's use the example of being drunk. So I'm assuming it's kind of like when you're at a bar and you're 2 or 3 drinks in, and you get up from the bar stool for the first time, you're like, oh, I guess those drinks hit me a little bit, but not to the point where you can't operate.
Yeah, to the point where you're like, I'm drunk. I'd rather not talk to my priest right now or my grandparents. Like it was like I know I'm not right, but that's where that communication element came into place. I'm going to talk through every step I do. I'm going to communicate with my other diver, make sure that I know where he's at the whole time, make sure that topside knows exactly what I'm doing. Try to be as clearly spoken as I possibly can, speak slowly over the comms, because topside is just like, wah, and generators going off and all that kind of stuff. And so, you just have to kind of fight through it. Some divers experience it as shallow as 90 feet, and some divers can go to 250 without getting that experience. And so, I just focus on the mission. The whole time I said, I'm down here to do one thing, put a shackle on landing gear, and get out home safely. And that's what I did. And so I think I completed 2 dives. The first dive was like kind of an assessment. We were kind of thinking of ways to get a strap around the girth of it at first. And that didn't really work out. We were kind of like doing like kind of scraping out with like poles and stuff. And then we're like, all right, we're running out of bottom time. Let's go back to the stage. The second dive, we had a better plan. We're like, let's go down with a pennant, shackle, let's rig this sucker and pull it up. And we had engineers from the carrier with us, flight engineers and stuff, and other like SMEs and those kind of people around us.
Other than the NARC experience in general, is there a down, when I say down, is there a total dive time that you can max out at, or can you just be down there as long as you can keep breathing?
So it was called surface decompression diving. So with surface decompression diving, you basically follow a table, and roughly it's 60 for 60. It might be 61 now. And what that means is for 61 minutes, you can dive at 60 feet come up slowly without owing any kind of chamber period. Now, if you blow that table, let's say you're at 60 feet and you got trapped, and now you're at 60 feet for 75 feet, you would owe time in the chamber, because you're not giving your body enough time to off gas the higher partial pressure of nitrogen that you've been breathing in as you were underneath the water column at that 70-foot depth. And so there's a little bit of a misconception. There's two different ways that, everybody's like, oh, diving, you got to come up slow. There's two reasons why. There's the one reason of bottom time, of having so much nitrogen in your bloodstream that you're going to get bubbles, or you're going to get a neurological type 2 symptoms. Or the other thing that can happen, that is just like day one diving, is if you hold your breath while you're down, the balloon's going to expand. And if you don't let that pressure out as you're coming up, you're going to get a tension pneumothorax. Or a pressure pneumothorax, one of the two. So those are those are the two things you gotta. It's depth and time that you absolutely have to manage. And dive watches are great. I've been thinking about getting my own one, but in my own personal experience and belief, I think plan your dive your plan. I'm going this deep for this long, and then I'm gonna come up, and I have it set. I'm monitoring the entire time. So
before we get into what took you from the Navy, did you ever have an experience in those early days, in that early onset, where you were down, whether it be narc or something else, where you went, all right, maybe this was the wrong choice for me?
Hell no. No, I loved every second of it. I never, anytime they were like, who wants to dive? Because I loved it. I mean, I remember showing up in Hawaii and sitting on the bench, waiting to hat up. And being like, Jesus Christ, this is my life. This is wonderful. I'm living in Hawaii. I'm not standing behind a bar with an apron on anymore, and staying out late, or serving drinks at 4 a.m. I'm sitting in Hawaii on a dive site about to jump in this beautiful warm water. I loved every minute of it, man. And that was one thing when I first came in. I was like, okay, I knew I had to sign a 6-year contract, and I did that. And then I'm going to get into commercial diving, and maybe I'll get away from the Navy, do commercial diving. So
your initial plan was just one enlistment and reevaluate, or one enlistment and get out?
Reevaluate. Okay. Kind of see where it's at, see if I like it. I thought I was 27, so I did kind of know my personality and knew that I had a hard time with like authority and that kind of stuff. And so it was Veterans Day, and my wife and I decided to go have dinner at Trump Tower, because it was half off the whole bill. And I was like, hell yeah, we ain't going to Applebee's. We're going to the nice one, And we were at
Stay with me, kid. I'm going to take you places.
Yeah. I was like, we ain't going to Applebee's. Like, we got that veteran discount locked in. But we were sitting there having drinks, and we were kind of milling over it a little bit. What do you want to do? What do I want to do?
Now you're back in Hawaii at this point?
This was me and Paula, me and my wife sitting there.
But you've come back from Bahrain. You're back in Hawaii?
Yeah, we were in Hawaii. I don't know if this was pre or post deployment. This might have been in between, or but we're sitting there and we were talking about whether I want to do it or not. And they just had this older couple at the bar, this gentleman who like overheard our conversation, and he's like, I just want to let you know, I'm a retired commander. I'd been in the Navy for how many years? And he's like, I'm going to tell you right now, the military is going to be a fraction of your life, 20 or 30 years. That fraction is going to pass. That fraction can set you on a good or bad trajectory. And what are you going to do with it? It's going to end. You might as well stay in it as long as you can. Stay in it, love it. You can only get better from it if it's making you better, which I felt it was. And so it was weird. It was like this one conversation with my wife and I on Veterans Day. Like the next day, I remember being like, remember that guy said last night, like, I don't want to get out. I think we're going to stick with. I was like, do you want to roll with this? And you know where the duty stations are. You know where we could end up. We could be in Guam. You know that, right? And she was like, let's go. I'm with you, baby. I'm ride or die. Like she was with me. So it was cool having that conversation with that guy. Really, and I had felt it. I slowly, that first command, I just fell in love with it. For once I had men around me teaching me leadership, showing me what it's like to be a leader. Other guys that I knew that were like Navy brats, that had come up in the Navy, that kind of knew the system, that like being around those kind of guys that like just had that leadership ingrained in them, that were my age or younger than me. Like I came in at 27, so I had guys that were 25 as my first class, you know, and these guys knew so much about leadership that I didn't, that I couldn't help but be attracted to him and gravitate toward him and say and want to kind of cling on to him. And so I really did fall in love with it during that time.
So you just gone from somebody encouraging you, spend your life, make a career out of it, but then it went the opposite direction and kind of had the rug pulled out from underneath you. How many years in were you at that point when it happened?
I was at 8 years. 8 years. I was ready to go to first class dive school, ready to go to my next command. I wanted to do, so I knocked out a salvage, knocked out a husbandry, underwater ships husbandry command. Now it was a spec war. So either STV, one of the teams, or a mobile unit, one of the EOD mobile units.
Were you back in San Diego at this point?
Yes. So I started 15 Fathoms while I was on deployment, and that was very much in its inception. And then we PCS to San Diego, and it was funny. It was like we came to San Diego with very, very wide eyes. Immediately we bought a house. Immediately we started cranking out babies. You know, we had our first kid, and then we had our second child. And then like right as we had our second child, that's when I had that dive, the injury.
We're going to get into this down the road. Is your wife, at this time, is she Canadian? Is she a Canadian citizen?
She's American now.
But at the time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just because that's going to play into the story down the road. So talk about the injury that derailed your career.
Well, it was an underwater ship's husbandry dive. It was on an aircraft carrier, and it was inside of a doghouse cofferdam.
Training or duty assignment? Well, like an actual salvage or just a training?
This is work. This is underwater ship's husbandry. So this is the fiberglass lamination on the shafts of aircraft carriers runs out and wears out, and that sort of helps lubricate the shafts to spin. And so what they have to do is basically seal it off in a doghouse where you have like a bubble, like a cofferdam, and then put a heating blanket over it to reseal the fresh fiberglass. Well, my job was I was doing the removal of the fiberglass. And so I was using a pneumatic grinder about probably 25, 30 feet of depth, but just grinding, grinding. And I mean,
no pun intended, but that sounds like a grind. I mean, I really mean like it sounds like tedious work.
Well, it was rough work. It was manual labor. Absolutely. But it was, you know, what I question is if I had foamies in, would it have helped or not? You know, it might not have, because there was so much reverberation, you know, from inside this underwater vessel. You know, I still had my mask on, but I think I'd pulled off my hood. So I had like, my ears were exposed, you know. But it was about 4 hours. I came, the one time I came to the surface, I came for extra grind wheels. I was like, give me 5 more grind wheels. And then the sun was going down at that point. So I was going hard. I was going to max out my bottom time that day. But I'd gone in, did the dive, managed my clean time, and I had to make a phone call. And as I hung up the phone, it had been about 10 minutes after my clean time. So about 20 minutes after I'd gotten out of the water. And I just felt the world shaking. I thought boats were like hauling ass past the dive barge, just ripping through the, you know, Coronado or whatever. And they were waking the dive barge a little bit, but that wasn't the case. And so I sat there and gave myself a neurological exam for a while. My friend came back and saw me. He said, "Tommy, I've been watching you give yourself a neuro and doing Romberg and doing heel toe walking. What's going on, bro?" And I was like, I don't know. I need to call Paula. I can't drive home. And I'm saying these things. I'm acting very out of character. And so I get my uniform squared away. This is after hours. I didn't have to have a uniform on, but for some reason I just started getting in this terrified mode of like, I need to put my uniform on. So I'm like, please call me. Please call Paula. I kept on saying that. The guys who were running the dive side, they thought I had a different kind of vertigo called alternate baric vertigo. They thought that I had wax compaction, and that sent me into a vertiginous state They thought it would pass. They elected to not drop the watches and bring me to the chamber right away.
If you're like me and you love your coffee, my go-to lately has been Blue Line Roasting. They're a Tennessee-based and law enforcement-owned company, roasting small batches of premium beans. You've got choices from Patriot, which is their light roast, to Failure Drill, their dark roast. They roast all their beans fresh, within 48 hours, and ship them to you even faster. You can also get your beans ground for you or delivered whole. Your choice. But here's the cool part. A portion of what you spend goes to support law enforcement families dealing with the impact of line-of-duty injuries or loss. You get an incredible coffee, and they get the help they need. Choose a single bag, a sample pack, or start a subscription so you're never out of coffee. Oh, and shipping is always free. Also, for the listeners of this podcast, use the promo code TRANSITION10 to get 10% off your purchase. So head over to bluelineroasting.com and make every cup count.
Wrong call. It was a bad call. What happened was I begged for a ride home, which when someone's begging for a ride home, that's a pretty good indication that they're not okay. You know, if they're saying I can't drive home, but I need to drive home. But anyway, they got me home. They got one of the other divers to bring me home. I made it up my elevator leaning on the wall and then like back and forth and made it to my door. I opened my door. My wife opens the door and she's like, dude, you are white as a ghost. Come sit down right now. She sat me down. She fed me. She's like, can you take a shower by yourself? You know? And I was like, well, I'm going to sit down in the shower. And we had just had kids, so we had a seat in the shower. So I was like, well, let me sit down and wash myself off because I feel gross. Got seawater on me. And
in that period of when it first hit, you're making that phone call and now you're home. Are you getting worse? Is it about the same or is it dissipating a little bit?
No, it's getting worse. It's getting, you know, the light, the way it's explained to me from people who were treating me that day was the light in my eyes were going out. And I was saying, I'm all right. I'm just feeling kind of sleepy. I'm okay. I'm feeling kind of sleepy. You know, but I'm like fading the whole time. So she's like, give me Doc's number. I'm calling Doc. He comes to the house and he's like, dude, get in the car. We're going. We went 32nd Street, threw me in the chamber. Well, they kind of checked me out a little bit first, but he's like, we saw you kind of, you know, you're saying you're all right, but you know, that's just like the fight in me, you know, I'm good. I can go. I can still go, you know, but they're like, we saw the lights going out. So we got you in the chamber. We did a treatment table 6 full extensions. And, when I came out, the nausea had gone. Some of the vertigo, I would say 75% of the vertigo had gone. But I just had this tinnitus that I had never experienced before. And I, you know, some people, from what I've learned, a lot of people, they get tinnitus with age and older age and people that work in your field, you know, that hear a lot of gunshots, it kind of creeps up on them, you know, where I'd always been real conscious of like putting earmuffs on and foamies and that kind of thing. And I had no tinnitus. I had pretty good hearing, you know, and all of a sudden it went from no tinnitus to tinnitus is almost governing my life. And that was a lot to deal with.
Never having experienced it, for somebody who's listening who may have heard of it but doesn't really know, am I correct in it's just a constant ringing in your ear?
Yes, precisely. So it's a constant ringing that's really, really high volume in this year. It's low volume in this year. Tinnitus is a very strange thing because it's tied to your anxiety. It's tied to where you're at in your head. It's tied to your sinuses and your congestion. And I've had to, through the years, figure out ways to calm it down and to bring me, because it puts you in fight or flight, because you always have the perception of sound and it never shuts off. And so I found a few really, really good remedies that work for me that I use, that I have to use. And I never expected to be in this situation in my life, but I use these different techniques to kind of help me relax and stuff.
And I'm understanding correctly, there's not a medication or a pill that you can take to just make it go away.
No, I've reached out to Dr. Deep Sea himself and been like, is there anything for tinnitus? And I mean, there's a clinic here in San Diego that I'm going to be going to soon that specializes in tinnitus. I figured out some stuff of my own That's real. That works really, really well. And that's the point I'm at. That's the point where I'm at now, is that the dust is settled. I've managed to get through the hard part, and now I'm just trying to figure myself out. And like, just like I said in the beginning about, when you're at your absolute worst, you got to hang on to those tiny little moments of life that are beautiful. Well, now I found myself reaching for those moments, looking for opportunities to be like, oh, you got a new thing at school. Let me see. Let's color it together, and it's beautiful. It's weird seeing the other side, but I'm just glad I made it through without committing suicide or doing anything ridiculous to hurt myself.
In no way am I trying to second guess what happened that day. I'm just asking from a knowledge base. I would almost think that anytime somebody's experiencing anything that seems similar to what you were doing, it would almost be default, just kick you into the chamber. Am I wrong in that?
No, you're not. No, you're 100% right. We're trained from day one. If anybody shows any sort of signs or symptoms of neurological deficit, you drop those stopwatches, you put them in the truck, and you run in the chamber. That night, I think it had to get done. They had the wrong headspace. It was late, and they made a bad call.
In a weird way, though, and I'm not putting this on you, I'm just asking, are you so out of it that you don't even think your first instinct is, let me put myself, or tell somebody, get me to a decompression chamber?
Well, I couldn't think that.
Okay.
Like I was saying these things, like looking back and thinking about what I was saying to them, I never looked at them and said, bring me to the fucking chamber right now. Bring me to the chamber. I need to go to the chamber right now. I never said that.
Got it.
I was messed up. So I was like, I need to go home. I need to go home. That's what I was saying. It was like I was in survival mode.
Almost like a child.
Yeah. I want my mommy.
Yep.
I need to go. Something's not right in here, in here. Something's going on. Please just get me home. My uniform's all put on. Look, I'm ready to go. Just let me go home. And I can't drive myself. And I said that to him. If I was supervising the dive and I had one of my divers begging to go home, I'd be like, bro, let's check you out a little more.
Right.
But the silver lining to this entire thing is, this injury, this tragedy, it happened on the heels of us having our second child. So we had a baby. So I knew it was the end. I knew it was a loss of, and you know what? Before I get to the silver lining, I just want to share kind of the progression of how it got.
Well, I'd like to walk through the process of it. So from that day, the doc came back, took you down, threw you in a decompression chamber. You were feeling a little bit better, but there comes a point you do end up in front of or at a doctor. So how long is that process? Walk me through what happened.
So I had the injury. I go to the chamber. They did a treatment table 6 full extensions at 32nd Street. The following day, they did a treatment table 6 full extensions at Bud. So I had to wait 24 hours so my body could clean. I still came out feeling kind of weird. Part of the protocol for neurological deficits is a trip to the CAT scan machine and then also a chest MRI. They thought I had a patent form in oval in my heart, which I didn't. And then the neurologist at Balboa was like, oh, there's something wrong with your right vertebral artery. You have an aneurysm. And so I get this call while I'm driving, and they're like, hey, Tommy, we found something else about your health that we need to bring up to your attention. You have a brain aneurysm. And I was like, oh. And then I got home and Googled it and fell on the floor crying because I did not know the definition of what an aneurysm was. So that just, it's hard to find the words to explain that time in my life because, you've now got this aneurysm. So where I was at was like, all right, let's treat it. Whatever you got. But I didn't know this. I was like, if y'all are going to do brain surgery on me, I don't want it to happen at Balboa. I want to go, nothing against Balboa, but I want to go to where there's a neurological ICU up in LA at UCLA and do it where the best if I'm that close to the best brain doctors in the country, I want to go there. So my intentions were pure. I asked the authorization to go there. They gave it to me begrudgingly. They weren't happy about it. I could tell. The neurologist I met at UCLA he elected to do 2 catheter angiograms. And I don't know if you know what those are, but they basically go in through your groin and then up all the way past your heart through your brain. The first one, I was semi-aware. I wasn't completely under anesthesia. So there was electrical charge that goes through your body, and it felt like your head was like the blood was expanding in your brain. And he did 3, and then he saw me breathing through it because I started like, okay. And he looks at me, he's like, "You okay?" I was like, "Yeah, just do it again. Like, let's go. Like, I don't care. I was just trying to tough it out." Then he came back the next day. My whole entire groin was blue and purple. It looked disgusting. I had to do another one. So we had gone through 2 surgeries already, 2 catheter angiograms to look at this art, to pick apart this aneurysm that's in my head. Speaking about that little crew of tight friends that I have from my hometown, I'd spoken to one of them, and the surgery was already scheduled. They were gonna. So this is important. I went to UCLA. The doctor finally gave me his diagnosis and the way we're gonna move forward. And he sits me down, and he's like, "We're gonna have to put a flow diversion stent in your right cerebral artery made out of titanium. You're going to be on blood thinners for the rest of your life. And if this stent cauterizes, it's going to immediately paralyze you from your chest down, and you won't be able to move for the rest of your life."
What's the bad news, Doc?
Yeah. And that being laid on you at the time in your life when you're just starting your family and you're just starting your journey, it was just like, I was looking like, what else you got? What else are you gonna throw at me? How hard are we gonna get here?
Yeah, you want me to spread my legs a little bit wider for you to get a better kick?
Yeah, it was wild. It was just like, you have your life's in this wonderful direction, and you're picking up speed. And 15 fathoms. I was like, fathom what? Like, I gotta get my life together, and the business kind of went by the wayside, and I just kind of saw the sales just kind of drop slowly. I should have just shut it down. I said, and just like I said, that stack of, you're getting out of the military. Now you're going to do an international move. You want to do college. I overloaded myself way too much. And I paid for it, but live and learn, sorry, I lost track.
No, it's okay. And for time frame reference, I'm just trying to get a window for somebody listening. You come up from that dive that day, spending the whole day grinding on a propeller. You're now at a doctor's office, and he's telling you, "I've got to do A, B, C, and D, and if X, Y, and Z happens, you'll be paralyzed." Are we talking 5 weeks? Are we talking 5 days? Are we talking 5 months? What time frame?
From the day I got out of the water to the moment the ink was drying on my DD-214 was about a year process, about a full year. And in between that whole year was like you've got an aneurysm. Now you don't have an aneurysm. You're doing vestibular rehabilitation, trying to get like your focus back. I was doing stuff like I bought a Bosu ball, and I would stand on one foot and throw a tennis ball back and forth with my wife to kind of get my equilibrium kind of back to where it's at. I still work on that. I still use balance boards and stuff.
So did you end up having surgery?
No. So this is the magic in that. So this doctor looks me right in the eyes and is like, "You have a 50% chance of being in a wheelchair, paralyzed from your chest down, being a quadriplegic." I told my friend Dale, one of my best friends from back home, he told my friend Robbie, who's a radiologist. He's the smart one of the group. and the really smart one in the group. And he calls me up, and he's like, "Send me your reports right now." So I sent him a quick text, and he's like, "Tommy, this is the most heavy-handed diagnosis I've ever seen in my entire life. Do not get that stent put in. You don't have an aneurysm. You have a deformation. That neurologist is just doing this for clout, is just doing this to put another notch under their bed, under their belt or whatever." He's like, "Tommy, you're taking a stupid, unnecessary risk. No stent in your brain, bro." He's like, "Stay away from Red Bull, keep calm. I do an annual CAT scan every year."
Is this something, Now, if I understand an aneurysm correctly, it's basically a bulge of an artery.
Precisely.
And the worst type of aneurysm is when it bulges and bursts.
Yes, and you get a brain bleed.
You hadn't burst, you had just bulged, in theory.
Well, yeah, well, the thing is, he tells me I have this aneurysm, but it was, if I had known anything about cardiology, I would have been like, that's extremely arguable. Because it's just, if you look at the x-rays, it's just kind of like a widening of where my artery is. Aneurysms are saccular, and they look like berries on a tree. They're that part of the inner tube that's blowing out and about to pop out. And every single neurologist who's looked at my scans has been like, there is no degradation to the cellular wall of your veins or your arteries. You're good to go. And so, I mean, I'm not going to go, try to
Was
live
it a
crazy
Navy
life.
doctor that made that diagnosis?
Marine
It was a military doctor.
Military, yeah.
And again, I'm not trying to go down the rabbit hole of
I'm not blaming anybody. Yeah.
Where I'm getting at is, unfortunately, there are a lot of men and women who spend enough time in the military and they think, hey, that guy knows his shit. He says it's an aneurysm. I wonder if there's almost a naiveness to say, let's get a second opinion, doc. I think a lot of the military members kind of over rely on the fact that, damn, you're a military doctor. You got to know your stuff.
You're a doctor. And they don't think they deserve a second opinion. They maybe, so many people in the military are young. They might have even thought about that. I was lucky. I mean, and me too. I said, I want to go to the best. I want to go to UCLA. I didn't know that this doctor, this neurologist I was looking for a second opinion. That's what I actually got. Cause I was kind of scared when this guy said, you need to get a stent in your brain. I was like, that's why I said, let me go to LA. And this doctor was like, it's your choice. You can not, or you can do it. I'm not pushing you either way, but and I was like, let's get me fixed. I'll take the chances, and yeah. And I mean, your life is absolutely worth giving a second opinion. Doctors are human, just like you and me. They're highly educated, but they're wrong sometimes. Not all of them, but some of them are. They'll have their own personal agendas, just like we all do. But I just
in his defense, he saw the MRI results, and to him, the way he analyzed it was an aneurysm.
Exactly. Yeah, and
giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, and that's the way he saw it, regardless of the call. But I'm glad I went with my best friend's call and said and deferred. It's not because here I am, But the crazy thing about that whole situation, and I just found this closure that I've been seeking for so long. So the two guys that were running the dive side that night, after that incident had happened, they got big PP slaps. They got their qual stripped. It was a bad call. From that moment forward, I was like, did these guys want me to die? Were they hoping I was going to embolize while I slept that night and just not wake up? Were they mad at me? Why did I do this? And I've had this nagging and I've had this anger inside of me and this pain. And I never thought just to text these guys and reach out, because I was kind of worried it was going to be almost like a curse out, like our argument, I was going to get I knew how much anger I had inside of my heart, and I didn't want to be like right. Whatever it is. So, one of the guys' faces on Instagram, and I hadn't seen his face in 5 years, and it threw me into the red. Flung me right in the red. I became angry. I put a nasty comment on the picture. I was pissed and it just acting out of character. And he DM'd me and was like, hey dude, why are you talking shit, man? He's like, first off, I wasn't the one overall in charge. Second off, your head was laying in my lap while I was digging shit out of your ears. So let's talk about this. And I was like, all right, you're right, Tommy.
Right.
Me and him had this great text conversation back and forth. We aired out all of our dirty laundry. We talked about what had happened. And then I called the overall soup. I had a text conversation with the overall soup, and he was friendly. He apologized. He said, hey man, we thought it was altered barrack, just like he did. And beyond that, I didn't want anything else. And it just closed this gaping wound that I had in my heart for this whole time. And so it was the right choice. I mean, it was weird how it happened. It was very coincidental how it happened, but you know, I know a lot of guys and a lot of LEOs coming out, transitioning out. You might have some hangups. You might have that chief or that sergeant or that whoever it was who was a complete asshole and put you in a funky situation, and you still wonder why, and you're still drinking, wondering why, and you're still, you know, yelling and flying off the handle why. Just ask. You know, I wish I had asked 4 years ago, but that's one other thing that I learned was, you know, I wish I'd asked that question a lot earlier, because I carried around a lot of that anger the whole time, and now I don't, which is great.
Getting past it, man. It's a huge maturity jump to make, and being able to allow yourself to get that closure that, you know, you need.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was the arc. It was the final, it was this bad thing happened, and now it's over with. And now it's over with, and that's really how I felt, and I love it. And if I was to see either one of those guys right now, I'd give them a big old hug, because it happened, and it's in the past, and we're all deep sea divers at the end of the day, and you know, it is what it is. But yeah, so the injury was horrible, sent me into chaos. We went to Vancouver.
Just real quick, you mentioned between the incident and your DD-214 was about a year.
Yes.
How soon, though, was it that somebody told you you can't be in the Navy anymore?
Ooh, I would say about halfway through. You know, they were saying, like, with what you've got, they're not going to let you into any of the programs. You're too junior to be supervisor status only. You haven't been to one chuck yet, so you can't do that. They offered me a desk and a pencil and said, you can recruit people. And I was like, man, y'all just almost killed me. Y'all want me to pull other dudes in? I was like, no way I'm doing that, you know. And so the opportunity for retirement presented itself, and I said, yeah, let's go. It seems like this chapter is closed. I can't be a Navy diver anymore. I'm going to switch. Just like I switched out of restaurants into the Navy, I'm going to switch out of the Navy into something else, and I picked the medical field. And so my immediate first plan after that first year, so yeah, it was about a year. Went from getting out of the water, them telling me about the aneurysm, doing all these tests, doing all the medical stuff, doing the VA stuff, the percentage, begging and just hoping and praying that this officer was going to see what happened to me as justification to retire me, you know, and like I after what happened to me, medical separation would have felt like the biggest atrocity I'd ever suffered my entire life. Like, there's no way. You almost killed me. You know, like this is, you know, and I mean, I know everybody's experience is different. I mean, there's guys who have been in way worse situations, but after that, I fought for retirement. I wrote so many, you know, impact statements and letters, and found up different instructions for, you know, diving medical regulations and stuff. And I fought for that retirement because it's all I had at the time. And so we got out, and that was it. And I actually was on terminal while I was in Vancouver for a day or two. So I was still active. I retired in Canada.
That period, you said about midway through, so about 6 months after the injury, somebody officially said you aren't going to be in the Navy anymore. We've got these other options, but that wasn't going to work for you. So now you got to work towards getting out. When does the mental struggles start? Are they starting while you're still in that last 6 months, or do they start after you got out?
Well, I did have a doc say to me, you know, hey, Tommy, you might put your eggs in this waiver basket and try to get wavered in and continue diving. But I want to let you know, I've been a doc for special operations for almost 30 years now. I'm about to get out. He's like, they're not going to let you hat back up. You're not going to be able to jump back in the water. That was the moment. That was the moment where I was like, oh shit, it's over with. It's, you know, and I mean, I didn't dwell on it too much. I really couldn't. I couldn't sit there and cry my hands about it. Of course, I'm sure I did at some point, but it was like, what's next? You know, the deal with my tinnitus hadn't hit me. I mean, immediately they put me on 3 different medications. So I was pretty doped up. So it was hard to process those feelings at the time. And I would say I didn't really start to process until I got to Canada.
So now the reason to go to Canada was your wife is at that time Canadian, and
Yes.
What was the draw to move the family to Canada? What was your plans?
She's from Vancouver. I had told her father that I was going to bring her back to Canada once I retired, which technically happened. So I said, all right, we're going to go to Canada. But I had looked at the Montgomery GI Bill and saw that it applied overseas. I'd heard about guys going to medical school in like Mexico, and I was like, okay, well, if they can go to Mexico, I'll go to Canada and do it. We went there. I didn't know how much involved immigrating to a different country or
It's a simple
immigrating to Canada.
process, right?
Not to Canada for some reason. They put me through the ringer.
And
Like,
what year was this?
This is 2019, right before stuff got a little spicy.
Had COVID actually kicked off noticeably?
No. We got to Canada. Everything was normal. The first 3 months in Canada were great. I was trying to get stuff lined up with the schools, with the the community, the colleges around town, and the COVID thing happened, and it was just that setback, and that's when I started just wearing the same outfit every single day. Didn't know what next. The only thing I really knew I needed was a therapist, and that's what I seeked out. And so that was pretty much like, go to therapy, get your kids to school, eat. Just try to figure something else out. And like colleges in Canada, they ain't never heard of the Montgomery GI Bill. They don't know what to do with a 36-year-old veteran guy who's injured and getting out. They just don't take care of their veterans in Canada like they do in the United States. And so once again, I'm like, almost immediately like, did I make a mistake by doing this? I wasn't happy there. It was cold. My wife was cold. She's like, I was so.
She's like, there's a reason why I left.
There's a reason why I met a Navy diver in Hawaii. I kind of want to get out of this friggin' freezing cold Canada. But she was cold. She wasn't digging it. I wasn't digging it. It stripped me of all of my purpose, because now I'm living in my father-in-law's house, and I'm just waking up doing nothing, and that's when I really had to just be like, let's watch Frozen. Come here, let me hold you for a while, because I got nothing else. And it was, I started shutting down in ways like, I didn't want to talk to my friends. I didn't want to talk to my mom because I got nothing good to say, because I'm so broken right now. Like, what, the only thing I'm going to do is sit there and bitch and moan because I'm miserable and it's hard to talk to. So I did need a therapist at that time. And I did come to a moment where I wanted to really hurt myself, and she gave me some words that really helped me. And in my darkest moment of the mental health struggle, I told her, I said, I go into the garage and I look for places where I could, secure a line. And and she's like, what's stopping you? And I was like, well, I think of my wife walking in and finding me. And she's like, okay, now what about you finding you? And so when she said that, and she said, imagine yourself walking into yourself, what would you say? I said, Tommy, why would you do that? What would you do that? You've got so much. And in this moment, she just made me realize, holy moly, like that, like despite the fact that I've been stripped from so much, I still have a lot. I still have a lot to live for. And so that was a big watershed moment in my mental health journey. That helped out a lot. But regardless, we were like, Canada's not the place for us. They were so strict with COVID. They were very, 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 very mask happy. And it was uncomfortable, to say the least, for everybody. I was unhappy there. Paula was unhappy there. My unhappiness made her unhappy. I decided to apply for the science program in Louisiana. And so I registered, and I was like, hey, Paula, the school accepted me. I'm lined up for this program. I got all the Montgomery GI Bill stuff lined up. It's going to be good to go. I have a house picked out, and she was like, yeah, I think it's time to go. And so, these steps and these stages, there's a lot of failure there. There's a lot of failure, and there's a lot of like, God, just another disappointment, another thing that just happened, another thing. But I just couldn't stop. I just wanted to, like, I know if I keep going, I'm gonna hit something good. I'm gonna hit a good thing, something that helps. And I mean, the year of college was great. The Montgomery GI Bill didn't take care of everything I needed to take care of, along with my VA percentage, and we were sliding backwards. We're starting to slide backwards more and more, and I'm in the office for hours studying biology and trying to learn. So that semester ended, and I said, I'm not going to reapply. I'm going to go find a job. What do I have? What is my experience? What are my skills, and what's around? And we found that there's a command. There's a naval command that specializes in UUV operations. And for those of you who don't know, UUV is an unmanned underwater vehicle. I wrote down my job experience, created my resume the best I could, utilizing everything, every system, looking at my joint services transcript, looking at everything that I had done, qualifications, brag sheets, those kind of things. Put a resume together and got it. I got pulled into a organization that was licking its wounds at the time, and they had a tragedy happen on the cycle before I got pulled in. I got put in a position where I was in contingency to have to do something where I didn't know if I wanted to do it or not. The contract that I was under, I was there with them for, and what they were asking me to do deviated completely. And so I deployed as a contractor. That first deployment as a contractor, I was on the ship, and I reached down and I feel this hair in my sock, and I pull it out, and it's one of my daughter's hairs, and I let it go. And as soon as I let it go, I reached out and grabbed it, and I brought tears in my eyes. And that deployment just did not feel the same without the word Navy across my chest. And so that said something to me. And the whole time I was there, I could tell, I was like, these people aren't going to train me up. They're not going to teach me the science of sound water propagation. They're not going to teach me acoustics. They're not going to, they want me to do one thing, is change batteries in these UUVs. And so I took it upon myself to learn hydrography and learn about bathymetry and learn about how acoustics travel through the water and the things that can slow down or speed up, the salinity of the water, temperature, things like that. And the biggest thing is making the best out of a bad situation. I know I'm not crazy about this job. I'm kind of white knuckling it, but there's this new science that I'm learning. And I come from the world of, high pressure air systems and diving systems, and it's all air, all gas mixtures, this, that, and now I'm in this whole new world where it's underwater acoustics, but there's still some principles that apply with UUVs and diving. And so I made it work. But I stuck it out there as long as I could. The South, my wife wasn't crazy about the South. I was, I saw that my options were limited there as far as advancement and growth. And I got into the position where the company was willing to bring me out to San Diego. And there it is. There's that opportunity. I knew I wanted to be back in San Diego. My wife, it just kind of organically happened when one thing after another. When we got to Louisiana, it's almost like we felt like we had San Diego on our hearts, but we were in Louisiana. And I was like, okay, well, we saw your parents. Let's see my parents for a year or two and see how Louisiana works out. It's still kind of in that, but we ended up coming back to San Diego. I was with the same company, different military aspect, and didn't like it. Community is a lot to me. Community means a lot to me. And I white knuckled the first year and a half because we had just moved to California. And I noticed myself around the community, around the people who had stood to the left and right of me. And they kind of knew about 15 fathoms, and they weren't encouraging. It's like they were like jealous. And then I talked to a couple of them, and one of them had a clothing business they wanted to start and didn't work out. One of them had a fishing business that didn't work out. One of them had this business where this one, and then I started seeing the pattern of the people that I was working around, and I was like, no, that, and the work environment became more and more dangerous. I'm already at 100%, I'm getting hurt and it isn't going to benefit me anymore. It just wasn't the spot for me. I knew personally I had better to offer the world. And so I left that job.
Now that company or the unmanned vehicles, is there any actual person diving, or are you merely operating an unmanned vehicle from topside under the water?
So the way the UUV works is you have a launch and recovery system. You launch the UUV, whether it's to do a pipeline inspection or whatever it is, and you basically have it programmed. You pre-program it to make it autonomous. And so all of its objectives and locations, all the different things that it's going to do while it's on the water, where it's going to scan, is all premeditated into the programming of it. So most of it's the setup. It's a lot of setup, and then you can monitor it as it's doing what it's doing in the water and stuff. And so there's no personnel, there's no diver in the water. You're launching a machine, and so it's kind of like same but different.
For you, and I want to focus on the recovery of your mental health, but I want to go back to just at the basics. You were a kid who loved diving. Can you still dive?
Yes.
And have you got back into it, or do you do much of it?
Yeah. So when I left that job, I was white knuckling when I first moved back to California. There was a couple safety incidents at work. And then I hurt myself, and I was like, that's the last straw. And I was like, so for the guys out there that are listening to this, that are like scrambling and trying different things, the first thing I want to do, I was like, okay, let me try to be a peer support specialist and answer soft lines, hotlines. I went through training, got into it enough to figure out that I am not the best at handling somebody. I'm too much of an emotional soul to deal with somebody who's at the worst moment of their life and help them through it. I shoulder too much of that. So didn't do that. Next was I was like, okay, I still know how to dive. I want to work for myself. Let's try hull diving. And so I started working for this crazy guy, putting me on these jobs, fixing hulls. He kind of set me up. I got set up. I had scuba gear. I could do it. Very easy, light husbandry work. It was really fun and it was really cool. It didn't pay enough, and I didn't have the time to really establish that staff and establish a group. It was just me, and I was running out of time. I had to find something solid, and I'm very lucky to have come across the job that I do have now. But I just had to take stabs. You try to devise a plan. You think of it the best. You try to cross all your what. It's almost like I follow. Have you ever heard the concept of ikigai?
I know I've heard of the term. I can't give you the explanation right now, but I know when you start talking about it, it's going to come to me.
Yeah. So ikigai is like, what can you get paid for? It's a Venn diagram, and it's what can you get paid for? What does the world need? What do you love? And what brings you prosperity, and like all those things coming together is like your ikigai. So I'm always searching for that, and so I was like, okay, I'll do hull diving. It's still diving. It's gonna be fun, but it just didn't work out, and all these failures bring me to these little, like I might have 5 failures, but that one success that I have, I'm gonna use that to jump as far as I can, and that's kind of how I've gone through life so far, and I mean I've gone from a dark place to a very happy place, and so it's working out, and so I'm going to try to keep this momentum going and keep this trajectory going, and rebuild 15 Fathoms into what it was.
So that's where I was going to go next. Is you mentioned 15 Fathoms a couple times. I want to get into that. Is that what you're doing today, or is this other company, this other work that you're doing, what you're doing?
Oh, well, what I'm doing right now for money is I'm an instructor. I'm an instructor down in San Diego, and I teach UUV operations, and it's a blast. I love it.
So you've stayed in and around that field of the unmanned vehicles.
Exactly. Yeah. So while I was in Mississippi, I learned everything about those vehicles I could possibly learn. And when it came time for me to get this other job as an instructor, I applied all those principles, and now it's fun to see these young sailors come through my class and teach them about, UUV operations, and just kind of it's a familiarization class. So it's not deep into it. Launch, recovery, send it on to mission, bring it on back home, and it's great, and I love it. But I still haven't given up on 15 Fathoms. That's still in recovery mode.
Talk about that though. What is it about, or what is it? How did it come about?
So the inception of 15 Fathoms was, I loved it. I fell in love with it while I was in Hawaii, and I remember while I was in Panama City, getting on Etsy and looking for diver helmet T-shirt, vintage diver helmet shirt, and I found one and I bought it, and I was like, this is the coolest shirt ever. I love it. It's what I'm gonna do, it excited me. And so while I was in Slidell, I was deployed to Slidell, and we had 10 whole days before the boat pulled in. And so basically I was instructed just to not get in trouble. I said, I can handle that. I can do that. But I decided to get a little hair up my ass and start a business. And I was like, I'm gonna do T-shirts. I'm gonna figure out some designs. I found a graphic designer. I found Printful. I found Shopify. And I put it all together in a hotel room in the Middle East. And then when I came back to Hawaii, I had an LLC and seller's permit waiting for me. And I just ordered my first shirt myself, which came to my own apartment. And opening that shirt and there's a picture of me. I'm like a little kid that says 15 Fathoms, like a green shirt. It was the first one that I got ordered, and I love that picture because I look like a child in that picture. I'm so happy. So that's how it started. And
what is the meaning behind 15 Fathoms?
90 feet, but anchor chain. So it's one shot of anchor chain. So as an anchor chain pays out every 90 feet, they paint the links going outwards, and that's how you can tell how much chain is paid out. A long time ago, ships would set out to sea. They would drop more, and they would drop a 4-point more. Right? They would first plumb the bottom to see what their max depth is, and then after they found their depth, they would pay out an extra 15 fathoms exactly of anchor chain. That anchor chain was the support system of the ship. It's what held the ship in place. It was the weight that anchored the ship, not the anchor, the chain. And so that 15 fathoms to me represents how grounded, before I get in the water with you, we need to be on the same page. We need to be together in this, because if something goes wrong, I want to know that you're going to be putting your reg in my mouth. And, so 15 fathoms is a representation of safety and the bond that divers need to have when they're in the water together. And
your whole intention was, at its inception, to be a clothing company. And
absolutely.
That's what you eventually plan to hopefully bring it back as.
Oh, it's happening. It's happening. I just got some new products in the mail last night, some more new products in the mail. So I'm kind of collecting new products right now. I'm getting my resale certificate revived. I had to. So this is one entrepreneurial thing that a mistake I made that I wish I never made, but
nobody makes. What do you mean mistake? Nobody makes mistakes.
Right. Well, in the haze of the retirement stuff, I just stopped paying business taxes. And when I moved out of California, I failed to dissolve. And so that $800 a year plus penalties started adding up. And I just maybe a month ago paid off all my fees and penalties. And now I'm waiting for, my business has been revived, but I haven't received my reviver letter yet.
Got it.
So the wheels, the chains are off. Right now I'm working with a really good web designer who designed another really successful website, and he's vetted and he looks like he's great. I found a visual media company to work with that we're going to be doing commercials. We're going to do a couple like bio sort of content generation, and I have some great new products. And so, man, I'm putting them in the chamber right now. I'm winding up, I'm winding up, and having that success, that initial, man, 20, I'd say 20, when I started, first deployment, no, second deployment, 2016 to 2018, I felt like I had a rocket by the tail. I mean, the brand was just, it was, I was meeting new people. I was getting asked to do this, getting asked to do that. And then it's crazy when you see that when you mess up or your life is just in such chaos, you can't hold your business together, seeing those people disappear, seeing who really gives a shit and who really doesn't. seeing the ones who stuck around, the ones who said, I bought a hat from Tommy in 2015 and I'm still wearing it and I'm going to buy another one. It was crazy to see who the real ones were and the ones that were just like, well, I'm just going to coattail this guy for his Insta clout or whatever. I want to get my business started. And it's given me perspective. And I can say that when I first started 15 Fathoms, I was absolutely shooting from the hip. I did as much as I could to research. I read as much as I could. I had never gone to business school. But now I failed. I failed hard. And I came to a point in, I think it was here in California, where I had gotten the third message of a customer being like, hey dude, I've been all through your website and I can't find a large in the shirt I want. And I was like, all right, shut down, password protect the website. I'm going to lick my wounds now. I'm going to really I've licked my wounds personally. I've licked my wounds personally. Now I want to lick my wounds in the entrepreneurship world. And so I shut it down, paid my fees, found out all the business tax I need to accomplish before I can reopen. And you see that combination of right things you need: great products, great SEO, great web presence, a good ads manager, wonderful product images. And now that I know the components, I want to bake it all in again and present it to people, and if I can catch that rocket again, that'll be the opportunity to do events for Big Brothers and Sisters, to do events for One More Wave, to do events for Wounded Warriors, to do things like that, to outreach even more than what I have now. And that website, that, merch website is so much more than a merch website. Honestly, I'd love to have a shop one day. It'd be cool. It'd be cool to have a brick and mortar and even have and it could be a hangout, so I've got a lot of vision still, and I've got a lot of ambition, and this transition and this entire arc of going through the hell of it and kind of coming back, that's how I feel. Good on, I did it. And I haven't did it, but I'm back where I need to be.
I would say that if I was going to use an imagery or analysis, you're out of the forest of the mental health issue journey, but I would imagine you're still in that green valley, so to speak. Do you still talk to a therapist regularly? I'm doing a couple of programs. I'm not with a therapist right now regularly, but I'm figuring myself out. There's something that I don't know how I stumbled upon this, but it works. So we were talking earlier about tinnitus, and tinnitus essentially being hearing damage, and then now your brain has to, just like how people like amputees might have ghost pains, they think they feel a pain in their arm. Well, your brain is trying to create the tones that it's missing out of your ear, so it interprets that as sound. Now they have certain kinds of music. They have music that's like masker music to relax it. I was presented with maskers, of course. It's one of the first things, and I didn't like it because it just masks the sound. What I found was something called binaural beats, and it's really cool. It's in one ear, you're hearing 110 hertz. In the other ear, you're hearing 112 or 113 hertz. It's two different frequencies going into your ear, so your brain has to create that extra frequency. And so I put on binaural beats, and it was about maybe 2-3 minutes in, I took a few deep breaths, and I could feel my body relax. And so it's a time commitment. It takes a little bit of time. You gotta be like, all right, 25 minutes binaural beats. I'm gonna sit and just relax myself. I know not a lot of people know about it because it's free, or if you pay for Spotify, it's free. There's no medication, and it works for me. And it may not work for everybody with tinnitus, but oh man, I can physically feel my body relax and digest and get out of fight or flight and rest and digest mode. And so that's been helping a lot. But I do want to start talking to somebody again, just to kind of wrap up things and just, the anxiety and uncertainty that I've had rattling around in me, even though everything's okay now, I still have a little bit of that rattling around in me. And I
told my wife the other day, it was just a regular Saturday. And I was like, baby, I don't know why, but I have like an impending feeling of like something bad's going to happen. Like, we're fine. It's a Saturday, you know? And so I know I've still got some things to work out in myself personally. I know I've still got some stuff that I need to process. I'm not flying off the handle at my family, you know, and I'm not getting irate. I'm not getting angry, but I am starting to see I'm able to control myself even better. When someone cuts me off, I don't get angry. You know, I'm getting out of that FOFA, you know, or, you know, whatever, fuck around and find out, FAFFO.
One of those acronyms.
Oh man, well, I'm thinking of Pete Hegseth when he said, fuck around and find out. Yeah, that's so funny. But yeah, like I'm getting out of that hypervigilance. You know, I'm finding myself being less hypervigilant. Do I always keep an eye out for my kids? Absolutely. I'm always looking around, even at soccer practice, you know, but I'm not looking for like, you know, someone to do something so I can just pop off on them, you know, like, and I hate to admit that I was in that headspace, but I was in that headspace. And I'm sure you've known guys that have been in that headspace. You know, tell me I'm not the only one, please.
You're the first one of almost 250 episodes.
Yeah.
No, yeah. It's what was coming to my mind when you were explaining it is and I don't want to undersell it or any way diminish it, but I would imagine it's kind of like a car accident. Everybody who gets their driver's license knows the likelihood or the possibility of a traffic accident is there, but you just start driving, you don't really worry about it. But then you get into the accident and maybe it's a left turn accident and you got T-boned or whatever it is. There is going to be that period, no matter how long after that accident, making that left turn with a car coming at you is going to feel weird. You're going to experience it different than I am because you've now been in that. You've got to that level where the anxiety took over. The noise in the head got too loud. And so and it may even just be a fear that, hey man, I now I've experienced it. What do they say? The hardest part of skydiving is the second jump because you now know what it's like.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so I would imagine for you, a little bit of it is not the fear that, oh man, I'm going to go backwards. It's almost the fear apprehension of, I don't want to go back there because I now know what it's like. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. Well, I hope nothing happens where I get hurt even more, where it takes my current career away, or, you know, I know what it's like. So, you know what it is? I know I can see when people are suffering better now, and I can see when someone needs help, and I can anticipate someone's needs even more in a mental health situation. You know, I work with students now. I work with, you know, they're active duty, but they're students regardless. I like to take an inventory of the class. Who's the smart guy? Who's the high speed guy? Who's the one that's going to be dragging behind a little bit? Who's the one that's trying really hard but doesn't quite get it, you know? And try to meet the students where they're at. And that's, you know, yeah, I've been in that car wreck. I got my head slammed to the ground, went to the hospital, and now I'm driving more cautiously.
I like to close out the episodes. You know, we've talked a lot. Any piece that you really want to make sure somebody hears, any piece of advice for another veteran or anybody who might have experienced what you've gone through to kind of wrap this up? Absolutely. If you've had a life-changing injury that's taken you out of your career, or just you can't do the things you can before, look into yourself and look into what you still have and start there, because you still have something. No matter how down and out you are, the dude laying on the ground still has something. And it's that something that's going to grow and get you through. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. Thanks for sharing your story. Absolutely. All the best going forward, man. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. As always, thank you for listening or watching the episode. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to reach out on social media or send me an email. The links are all in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. Also, if you're not already, please follow the podcast on whatever platform you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe on YouTube. And if you would, please leave me a rating. Ratings do two things. You can tell me what I need to fix or improve, and the more ratings also gets the podcast recommended to more people. Another ask, please share the podcast with anyone you think could benefit from and enjoy it. And last, don't forget, sign up for the newsletter.